And good morning, everyone. We are back. Dave and Matt here on KFYO Mornings. And as promised, we have our Congressman, Jodey Arrington, with us this morning. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Dave, Matt.
You came at a perfect time. I tell you, we had about 17 different texters this morning about this shooting issue. This is going to be, in my prediction, this is going to be a big, huge talking point for the Democrats, and I'll predict that a year from now we'll still be talking about this issue. We have also. I want to get to this, Congressman. Here, I don't know if you heard this yet, but former Vice President Joe Biden misstated the locations of mass shooting in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, while speaking to donors at a high-dollar fundraiser in San Diego on Sunday. He mistakenly said that the shootings were the tragic events of Houston and Michigan. Again, my prediction, he's not going to make it to be the nominee of the Democrats. I just don't think, I think his time has come and gone. But that's really beside the point this morning.
Yeah,
but I just couldn't help it. I wanted to get that story in there.
Yeah, well, I think, look, you're right. He's going to have a tough time. Unfortunately for the Democrats, he's the most moderate of the bunch, and I think has probably the best, most formidable competitive chance against our president, who I support, and the rest have such extremist views. But I think all of us, look, let's just stop the political talk for a minute and just say, what a heartbreaking scene in El Paso.
Absolutely.
How disastrous this has been to see the consecutive shootings with Dayton and El Paso within 24 hours, and on the heels of the shooting in California. As Americans, our hearts go out to the communities. I know a lot of people. I spent a lot of time as vice chancellor at Texas Tech in the community of El Paso. I know their community leaders. Dee Margo is their mayor. I know him and his wife. And I called him to express our condolences and our prayers. And anyway, it is a somber morning to join you.
Absolutely.
And it is a sobering one. I think my concerns is when you mention sort of the politics is that we don't overreact, but that we let these investigations play out, and then we parse through from A to Z every way we can to prevent these, but also look deep at the root causes, because it's real easy to look towards the inanimate objects of violence and hatred. And that's what this was, pure hate in El Paso. Ideologically extremist views, racially motivated, it appears. But we've got to go deeper and look at our society and our culture and say, what's driving this at its core?
But Congressman, here's my take on this issue. I believe that the Democrats, of course, their ultimate goal is to do away with gun ownership, number one, and I think that's what it's all about. But this is, to me, and tell me I'm wrong, but this shooting is the one that they can draw a direct correlation between Donald Trump, the white supremacist, whose violent rhetoric has directly caused this shooting in El Paso. The others, not so much. This one is the one that does it for them. Am I wrong?
Well, they're certainly playing that. You heard Beto O'Rourke calling the president a racist, and I think it's...
Now, white supremacist is the key word that they're using.
Yeah, they're using...
If you watch the morning news shows,
Absolutely.
It's just white supremacist, Donald Trump, white supremacist, over and over and over.
Unfortunately, just like a lot of things, we've seen the politicization and weaponization of the United States House oversight, judiciary. This is going to be weaponized against the president. It's going to be politicized. This is something, just as a West Texan and as an American, I don't want to get into the political aspects of it. I want to think, let's pray for these families. People say, well, that's a trite statement. Well, that's part of the problem in this country is that we think prayer is just trite, and we think it's meaningless.
I've got a texter this morning, and this kind of leads us up into another important issue. A texter says, "Mr. Arrington, please do not vote for any restrictions on the people's right to own firearms," which brings me to this. We've already had, Beto O'Rourke and two others, Kamala Harris, I believe, and another, who called on McConnell in the Senate to call back the Congress. Of course, and I think that's purely political. He's not going to do that.
No.
Call back the Congress because he is holding H.R.
8. H.R. 8
is
what they're talking
which is the House has passed H.R. 8. And the Senate, McConnell is sitting on it, gun control.
Yeah, which, by the way, in that piece of legislation, if I were to lend my brother a pistol, I could be fined up to $100,000 or go to jail. If a farmer gave another farmer a gun for pest control, he could do the same. There's a lot of problems with that. But the overall criticism I have is that we have reasonable restrictions on gun ownership and possession. Nobody thinks it's a good idea for violent criminals or people who are mentally unstable to have guns. But what we can't do is prevent law-abiding citizens from protecting themselves, their families, and their communities. And look, 90% of shootings happen in gun-free zones. 80% of gun-related crimes are committed by people who either stole the gun or bought it on a black market. It is very difficult to prevent these things. And again, we're not looking at the root causes. We're going to that knee-jerk reaction and that political reaction. And there's no question, and we've seen it with open borders. We've seen it with decriminalizing border crossings, free health care for folks who come here illegally. The list goes on, Green New Deal. We're going to see some extreme positions on gun control coming out of the presidential candidates on the Democratic side. And we just got to keep our heads about us, and we've got to look deeper again at the root causes.
Well, I think that the extreme positions on that have always been a loser for the Democrats. So, I mean, but I do kind of want to go back to, you were talking about prayer, and a lot of people have been just knocking, I don't want your prayers, I just want you to do something. But the fact is that if you don't believe in God, it's an understanding that you wouldn't think prayer does something. But for those of us who believe in God, we see that as being God's intervention as being the most powerful thing that could happen, and it's very important to us. So I think that I see them just trying to take that away to some extent.
Well, I think we've seen the degradation of traditional institutions, whether it's the family or church. I think we've seen the rise in a culture of violence and the glorification of that. I think we've seen other factors like folks who can immerse themselves in the virtual world, in digital, in social media, and be disconnected from real relationships, lose empathy, dehumanize this society and their world. And all these factors are bearing down on people. And then you add that to people who've experienced early childhood trauma, sexual abuse, child abuse, and we've got what we've got. And that's what I mean by the deeper root causes. And they're not easy to solve. Doesn't mean we shouldn't look under every rock and discern every way we can help. But there's not going to be one government program that's going to get at these things.
Congressman, 7:16 a.m. here this morning on KFYO Mornings with Matt and Dave. Also, Congressman Jodey Arrington. Have your questions ready and text them to us, 806-680-2790 is our text number. Back with more of the Congressman after this. And we are back here on KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin, broadcasting from the Thacker Jewelry Studio. See that custom collection at 6120 82nd Street here in Lubbock. And we have Congressman Jodey Arrington on with us this morning. And, of course, The El Paso shooting is consuming most of the news. It's kind of sucking all the air out of the room. And we've been discussing that. And according to you, our listeners this morning, that's what's on your mind. Our text lines are open. If you'd like to comment, 806-680-2790. Shoot a question to your congressman as he's here this morning. See, what were we talking about when we went to break?
Well, we were talking about the root causes. I want to say that if you look at the suicide rate, Dave, it's for young people, it's increased over the last 10 years by 33%. 22 veterans take their lives on average a day in this country. Serious mental health conditions over the last 10 years are up over 50%. I'm talking about depression, anxiety, and these factors of the human soul and psyche and the mental health conditions it's an epidemic. And if we can't get to that and intervene, and if we can't figure out how to identify, recognize, and alert folks, like the guy in Lubbock recently. I mean, y'all saw the newspaper and the article there in the newspaper. I think it was Saturday, about the gentleman, young man who was had already bought a weapon and 17 high capacity magazine rounds of. And he was interdicted by police, but because of his grandmother notifying, and now he's being treated as opposed to having an event play out like we saw in El Paso.
That's one of the interesting things is a lot of these people they broadcast online to some extent what their plans are, what they're thinking, or at least some of their, wrong thinking, and a lot of them are stopped through people warning, the law enforcement, but some of them aren't. I don't know if people are scared to talk about it or if there's, No,
that's something that's going to have to change, Matt, for sure, is that we have to recognize and notify law enforcement. I mean, the Florida shooting that got a lot of attention, and the kid who perpetrated that mass shooting had a lot of problems with law enforcement. I mean, several encounters. Mm-hmm. And research shows that most mass shooters will tip their hand, and either they'll look for validation in an online forum, or they'll tell a friend or a loved one that they're looking to play this out, and they just aren't taken seriously. Almost every case that has happened. Mm-hmm. So one of the issues here is to be able to recognize that and alert law enforcement, and to give law enforcement the tools that they need to be better at discerning these things.
We have a texture that says, concerning the shooting, what you and others are not talking about, concerning the real reason behind these acts, is that these younger shooters believe that is the coolest way to leave this world. That is definitely the product of video games, Matt.
No.
And social media, and not allowing the kids to find out their aggression on the football field or playground. Well, of course, there are millions of kids every day that do play football and baseball and other playground sports.
I want you to look at the age of a lot of these, and they're not right out of high school. A lot of them are in their early 20s. I really think that we have a society that gives rewards for doing nothing. We tell people that they're winners just because they sit in their seat and participate, and then they get out in the real world and they find out that nobody gives them anything. They have to earn it. And sometimes I wonder if that's just something that they can't deal with.
Yeah.
And so they want to take it out on other people.
I think there's something to that. There's a fragility there, and maybe there's a lack of maturity. I think there's certainly a lack of maturity, but a lot of this deficiency comes because people are disconnected from community. Mm-hmm. We're wired for interpersonal relationship. That's how God made all of us. And any of us, when we get isolated, are in trouble. And if you start going into these, virtual worlds and these digital forums where the most, perverse thoughts and ideas are being kicked around, it just takes you down a dark path.
And anonymously a lot of times.
And anonymously, which makes it even more dangerous.
Well, the caller this morning reminds us that the killer had a hit list of the kids he wanted to kill. Are we talking about the El Paso shooter? Yeah, I guess that's who we were talking about. Okay, again, 7:28 a.m., and we're going to head for a break here on KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin, and, of course, Congressman Arrington with us this morning. 70 degrees outside, 95 that forecast high today for the 5th day of August. More with the Congressman after this. 95.1 FM, 790 AM. This is KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. It is 7:35 a.m. And Congressman Jodey Arrington with us here in the studio, reminding you that our text lines are open. 806-680-2790 is the number. Pose a question for Congressman Arrington if you would like.
Congressman, I know that we've been talking about something very heavy and deep, but I mean, there's so many other topics going on right now. So, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about is there's a lot of congressmen, and I think you said 4 from Texas, but even just across the United States, there's a lot of GOP congressmen that are walking right now. Do you think that's going to affect the chances of taking the House back over? And is there a reason why they're leaving?
Well, we had a lot of retirements in prior to the midterms, and it does hurt you in terms of these folks have been established in their name ID. They have organizations, and so the likelihood of an incumbent winning is greater than some newcomer. At the same time, I'm a term limit guy, so I don't think we ought to be up there for 16, 18, 20 years. I think you ought to, I think you need more than 2 terms, but I think you should have a defined period and then hand it over to the next citizen legislator to go up there. That's the way the founders envisioned it. Now, Mike Conaway's been a great, he's in our backyard. He's been a great friend, helped me get on the ag committee. We worked together on the farm bill to fix the cotton situation, which was huge, billions of dollars to West Texas. And I'm going to miss him as a friend, but I think it is a good time for him to transition out. And I think he serves as a great role model in the sense that he worked his way to a leadership position where he had maximum influence on the outcome of policies for West Texas values and our interests like agriculture. So we're going to miss Mike, but it's a good time. Mac Thornberry's to the north. He's been there. He'll be 18 years this term. I think you'll probably see in the near future him roll off. But yeah, if there's a sea change, a lot of that's generational though, Matt. It's just time. Kenny Marchant's been there a long time. So is Olson and the other ones. Will Hurd is the only one that hadn't been there a long time who's announced his retirement. And he's actually in a district, as we talked about off the air, where Hillary Clinton won. He's in an extremely competitive district. So most of these guys are going to keep the seat, or most of these seats will continue to be Republican. Yeah. Will Hurd is the only one I think that's going to be competitive.
Okay. Do you see a chance to retake the House right now?
I do. 18 seats need to flip on net. 44 seats that Democrats won in the midterm, they won by less than 5%. And of those 44 that Democrats won, Trump won 31 of their districts. And 13 of their districts, Trump won by 5% or more. Mm-hmm. So with the lurch to the left by this presidential primary for the Democrats, open borders, free everything, double your taxes, and a lot of the other extremist views like the Green New Deal, banning cows and airplanes, I think with their lurch to the left and their obsession with harassing the president and virtually doing nothing with the power that the people gave them in a divided government, virtually no major bipartisan results out of the Nancy Pelosi leadership. I think they're going to end up handing the gavel back to us because I think the moderates and independents, they are the ones that really make the decision ultimately on presidential elections for sure. And they certainly will in the competitive districts like Will Hurd's. Mm-hmm. And I think they're going to be extremely worried about the socialist ideology on the left. And I think they're going to be very upset that no productive problem solving happened under Nancy Pelosi. But when President Trump and the Republicans were in charge, we did real stimulation of the economy through free market policies, and we're seeing record results on unemployment, job participation. We have more jobs than we have people. And I think folks are going to say, man, the economy's good. Our military is stronger, and we have a president that actually believes in core concepts of our democratic system like rule of law. I think we'll take our chances with him. They may not like his rhetoric, and I don't endorse everything that he tweets and says, but on what he does and on his agenda and what he's accomplished, I think it's been extraordinary.
Well, it's hard to really overstate that, and I keep wondering. I keep visualizing Trump and the Democrat nominee in a debate. And what are they going to say?
You think he's licking his chops right now?
Well, I'm just wondering. You have that Democrat, he's finally there, and what is he going to say? Elect me and I'll fix this terrible economy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know what he's got.
Well, and I'm watching this Democrat field pretty closely, and there's not very many of them that can speak without a teleprompter or premeditated ideas. And Donald Trump's very good at getting you off of what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
well, again, safer, stronger, freer. That's what we all want for our country.
Yeah.
Under Donald Trump, we've seen all those things happen in across the board. And with the Democrats, it's socialism. And it's an endless investigation.
Vote for me and get free stuff.
And get free stuff. Meanwhile, we're already $22 trillion in debt, and they'll bankrupt the country.
Okay. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking a little bit about the economy, but we've got some foreign policy issues I just want to throw out there. We'll be right back after the break.
News Talk, 95.1 FM, 790 AM. This is KFYO Mornings. It is 7:45 AM. Congressman Jodey Arrington with us this morning. So you're off. You get a whole month vacation. You're off and you're back home.
It sounds like it, doesn't it? When people, I always hate when someone calls it recess. Sounds like I'm at the playground seesawing with my colleagues. That's actually what I feel like sometimes in Washington, is just seesawing with colleagues, not really being as productive as we
out on
need
the monkey
to.
bars.
No, I've been all over, even since I've been back, and continue to. I'll be in Friona. I'll have a town hall there. I'll stop in Muleshoe and speak to a Rotary Club. I spoke at the 90th anniversary for our local Lions Club, 90 years. They started when the stock market crashed in 1929, when the average lifespan of a male adult was 55 years of age, and we're almost at 80 now. So that was fun, and just to thank them, because I'm all about the community having control over their destiny and states and free people. That's my philosophy, and that's why I love being with these organizations, because, we always look to the federal government as if it's as if all the solutions emanate from Washington. The fact is, I think we've had too much Washington and too much intervention and expansion of government in our lives from the federal side. And I think it's actually had the opposite effect. We, the people, when empowered, can do a great job of governing ourselves. And that's that. So being out in the community with the Lions Club and Rotary Clubs and other volunteers and leaders. I'm going to be in Big Spring for another town hall. I was there recently last week. So I'm going Wednesday. Then I'm going to shoot down to San Angelo to be with Mike Conaway and my ranking member Kevin Brady to talk trade at the Tom Green County Legislative Summit. So lots of things going on, and nothing makes me happier than to be back home in the district and with the people I represent and love.
Ain't it great to be a Texan?
Man, it really is. It makes life a lot easier than some of my colleagues who are Republicans, but they love what we believe and stand for, and they are jealous of the constituency that I have because they're in the suburbs where it's kind of 50-50, and they have a tough time. It's a tough go
What's it
out
like
there.
living in D.C. up there in La La Land?
It's exactly that. It's frustrating because it is La La Land.
D.C. is like 90% Democrat, isn't it? It's as Democrat as Lubbock is Republican.
Exactly. It is absolutely the antithesis of Lubbock culturally, value-wise, politically. I love people, and I engage folks on all sides. I mean, that's how I ended up working to pass or to introduce, at least, I hope it passes one day, bipartisan legislation on term limits with folks like Ro Khanna. I've worked with Beto O'Rourke, and I don't agree with Beto on just about anything except to serve veterans, and we worked on legislation to improve the life of our disabled veterans. So, I mean, West Texans, one value that we do have that I think serves me well in Washington is I love everybody. I respect everybody, and I try to treat them with that kind of respect. I attack the problems. I attack their ideology, and I'll debate them and fight tooth and nail to keep, for example, socialism to become normalized in this free society. But, if you don't have relationships and you don't have friendships, then you can't find common ground, and we need to do that more often. And I think there are plenty of opportunities to do that. So while I am a very staunchly conservative guy from a staunchly conservative district and culture, I think it's also very West Texas to love all and treat all with respect and look for common ground when we can.
Your other parts, let's see, identify for us District 19.
Well, it goes all the way to the New Mexican border out in Gaines County, Seminole, Farwell, comes down through Big Spring, Sweetwater, Abilene, all the way out to Graham in Young County and Breckenridge.
Yeah.
It's 29 counties, and
Lubbock is probably the most conservative of all of them.
I'd say Lubbock and Abilene are both pretty scrappy in their conservatism. I think Trump got more votes per capita in Taylor County than in Lubbock, but they're right there. I mean, they're equally conservative. Mac Thornberry has the most conservative district in the nation by votes for a president, for a Republican president. And Mike Conaway's probably 3. The only reason I'm not 1, 2, or 3 in Lubbock and in my district, Lubbock and Abilene, because I'm sandwiched between those guys, is probably because of Texas Tech. I mean, I love my alma mater, but I'm just telling you that some of my friends over there and former colleagues, I served as vice chancellor, they're not Republican, they're not conservative, and it doesn't make them bad people. I'm just saying the presence of that community is just that they're more liberal.
But still, I will bet you that Texas Tech on a whole is far more conservative than the average college campus in America.
There's no question, and we had an event recently where I commended them for being a military-friendly campus and recognized nationally for such. And it's those. I think the West Texas culture influences Texas Tech just as much as it does anything else. So sure, it is, but I do think that huge community is definitely more Democrat-leaning, and otherwise, I think we'd be 1 or 2, along with our friends in Amarillo and our friends in Midland, Odessa.
Okay, 7:52 a.m. Let's take a quick break, and then we come back. We only have a couple of minutes to wind things up. We'll let you. We'll turn the mic over to you. You can give your elevator speech. How about it?
You got it.
All right. .1 FM, 790 AM. This is KFYO Mornings. Dave King and Matt Martin on a Monday. 70 degrees here in the hub city. 95 the forecast high. And again, Jodey, we've got just a couple of minutes. Should say, Congressman. We have a couple of minutes left, and I just want to. We're always so glad when you come. You always impart some good information. After all, you do represent us, and our station covers the majority of your district. And so I know we have a lot of listeners from all over, and particularly outside Lubbock County for certain. And you always provide some good information to us about what's going on in Washington and so forth and so on. I'll turn the mic over to you and let you tell us what is up right now that you're working on?
You bet. Well, first of all, we have a mutual interest to have your listeners and my constituents informed about what's going on, and hopefully I can cut through the D.C. drama and the theater and the hyper-partisan politics and talk about what's real and what's happening that's real, like trade and the opportunities for 170,000 new jobs if we can pass USMCA. It's a bipartisan deal. All my Democrat colleagues from Texas want it. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to give the president a win. That's the sad reality of where we are. She'd rather do Mueller, continue Russian investigations that have where I think the American people have moved on, but they haven't. I think it's going to hurt them, quite frankly. And it's sad for our country, because I'd rather do some work with Democrats to actually solve problems like drug pricing for seniors. I think there's a great opportunity there. We talked about trade or infrastructure. My gosh, our economy is growing like gangbusters, but we have a dilapidated infrastructure that we should modernize and improve. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are, but I appreciate always the opportunity to talk about what's going on up there and listen to our constituents online as they text. Bottom line is, my heart's broken, as y'all's is. And if there was a magic solution, I'd be for it, but there's not. There's some deep cultural, familial issues that we have to take a hard look at.
So is the USMCA, do you see that getting through before the next election?
I hope it does, but I think it's being politicized like everything else. But I hope that the Democrats prevail on Nancy Pelosi and say, we have got to do this. Kind of like they prevailed on her to provide humanitarian aid after we asked repeatedly to get that to the folks on the border.
KFYO Mornings will continue after this. Thank you, Congressman.